very rainy day out. Very, very rainy and wet. But I'm going out anyways. So I thought with all this rain and everything that I'd go out to Charleston Falls Preserve. It's my first time going there. I figured with all the wet conditions and the really cloudy skies, it'd be perfect for shooting some more waterfalls. And I was checking out pictures online because this is a pretty new location to me. I just discovered it about a month or two ago. Just messed around on Google Maps or whatever. The minute I saw the giant, they call it the miniature Niagara because of it's got like a unique rock outcrop that's very similar to the Niagara, the real one. So there's this big waterfall, and once I saw pictures of it, I just, I knew this is like immediately a place I wanted to go to and experiment with long exposure. But I've seen some other photos online of people taking long exposure or otherwise. Yeah, rain's gonna be pretty much a challenge on and off for probably the first couple hours, but it should taper off and should just be a nice little cloudy and wet day. But yeah, let's get started. And we made it, Charleston Falls Preserve. So to give you a few little tidbits of information, this is actually my first time, like I said, here at Charleston Falls, ever visiting it. And not only that, but this park, or preserve, is included in the Miami County Park District, which is pretty cool, because I've never been to a park from them in that park district in that county. So it's very nice. So at the beginning of the trailhead, it diverges off to one side of the trail, and then the other sign is pointing the other direction to the left, said falls. So I immediately wanted to go to the falls, of course, because that's the main reason I went here. And at the moment I'm the only one here, which is pretty nice because it's still fairly early in the morning, about 9 o'clock now. So on both sides of the parking lot, when you're driving right through it, there's some prairies, and there's already some different kinds of wildflowers that are blooming up, and this time of year for late spring, early summer. As you see, it's kind of raining on and off a lot, very hard as well. And I also noticed some other kind of cultivated flowers that along the trail here at the beginning. So I'm going to see if I can photograph those as well. But right now I'm just really I'm on this single-minded pursuit to get to this waterfall. And I definitely want to capture that first. And if I can get that, then I'd call this day a success already. And anything else is extra, but it'd be great as well. There's just so much mood and mystery in this woodland as I'm walking through, and the trails are very wide and they're very well laid out, and they're not too slippery or muddy, which is very nice just for walking along. But just the way the mist, there's almost like a sort of like a blanket, like a layer of haze just coming swept right through this woodland, and all these tall narrow trees on the side of the trail, and it's magnificent. And then not only that, but with all the green foliage and how it's all nice and wet, this really just painting a nice scene for me. And I think I might, maybe later on photograph some of the woodland here and see if I can get some more kind of some foresty landscapes in there. For right now, I'm trying to, it's been very, very hard to stay focused, but for now, I'm gonna keep on hiking here and we'll get to the falls, and it should be coming up here really shortly. All right. I can hear it and I can kind of see it, so I wanted you to get my genuine reaction. Looks like this is the lower falls. Oh wow. I'm gonna stick up high for now. This looks incredible. Oh my gosh. Quickly get on over here. Oh my god. Oh man. This is killer. Dang. You're gonna like this. Alright, photo taking time. Alright, as I make my way away from the Charleston Falls, I'm actually sitting right by the entrance to the cave, and but talking about the falls at least yet. My ears are ringing still. Feels like I spent all day just there, and yeah, it was probably a good hour or two. Got it at least, let me check here. Got 129 raw files. Most of them are brackets. There's also some single exposures in there as well, and it's just absolutely gorgeous stuff. I got the kind of the postcard worthy shots, just like wide angles from up top on the overlook, and then going down just kind of this winding path where you actually get to, you know, hike alongside the limestone cliff face that is kind of wrapped around it, and it's just amazing to see all that. And so I took some shots wide angle with my 24mm prime lens. It's a fixed focal length. So got some shots of up top, and then down below, kind of towards the base of it a little bit. And I use a polarizer filter and ND filter. And let me go through some of the settings here I got. So from up top on the overlook here, I was just varying my shutter speeds. I got like 1 second, 1/6 of a second. I even went as far as 20 seconds. And then I kind of kept my aperture and my ISO mostly consistent throughout my whole session over here. Mainly staying around the f16, f14 range, and mainly around the ISO 100 to 500. Found those just to be very consistent. Produces some very nice sharp photos, and just like I said, varying that shutter speed and bracketing. These will make some very nice high dynamic range photographs, which would be very nice. And so yeah, those are from up top on the higher overlook, but it's amazing as you hiked down to it, just the wind kept kicking up the mist, because the way I had my camera situated with the lens pointed at it, I mean, obviously when you're facing the waterfall, it just had the heaviest of mist that just kept flying right into me. It got over my glass, I mean, all over me, obviously, the camera gear. But the thing is, I had to keep, quite literally after each exposure, I had to keep, take out one of my little cloths here. Let me show you. Just one of these simple little lens cloths. And I keep wiping down my lens here just to even get a, you know, a nice image, because if you don't, because I started to notice it a lot more if I didn't do it, is that it would get this very hazy, kind of very low contrast hazy look to it, the photographs. And definitely I don't want to do that, of course. So I immediately pulled this out of my bag and I just started wiping away, and I had to do it pretty much after each exposure, just because of how, you know, roaring and loud, you know, all this mist just kept kicking up, and it was just like, it was just a really big struggle. So at the base of the waterfall, I got, you know, mostly the same settings. Got like f14. I kind of cranked up my ISO to about the 400, 500, up to 800, even 1,000 kind of range there, just because of I wanted to really expose well enough to get the shadowed area behind the waterfall, because it's just this deep cliff face of limestone. And if I didn't use a higher ISO, it just kind of made this giant kind of black blob behind it, which, I mean, helped distance and contrast the waterfall from it. But I definitely wanted to kind of retain some of the detail and shadow detail from the behind there that's kind of wrapped around, because that cliff face takes up a big part of the image. So I definitely didn't want it to be too underexposed there in the area. And yeah, using similar shutter speeds. I actually got a little bit faster ones of like 1/8 of a second, which is very nice. I got 4 or 5 seconds, and it's pretty cool because I was experimenting at different angles using, like I said, the 24mm prime. But then I slapped on my 75-300 small telephoto zoom, and I went back up to the overlook, and from down there, kind of near the base of the waterfall, I just experimented with more angles, because once I got the postcard worthy shots, I definitely wanted to put on a smaller telephoto and kind of extract more details from it. And just when I thought the Charleston Falls was enough, I turned around at the base of the waterfall, and you're kind of crossing the bridge where the water flows into more of like a creek or stream here. And I made this wide angle shot, a vertical driven shot. It had a beautiful S-curve, and it wasn't obviously as fast and roaring as the Charleston Fall, but it still had a nice little silky smooth kind of long exposure kind of flow to it. But I definitely feel like that compositional technique I used with this S-curve leading line was very effective here. And to be honest, I like that just as much as, you know, shooting the entire waterfall, just because it felt, you know, more intimate. It's probably a shot that most people would be less likely to photograph, at least I would think, you know, because usually they're turned around facing the giant, loud, you know, big waterfall. But I definitely enjoyed shooting, turning around and getting that kind of different perspective there, showing, you know, the much quieter side of where the waterfall ends up. And not only that, but if I turn my back against the waterfall, there's less mist, so it's a little easier. I didn't have to, you know, wipe my lens each time I took an exposure. Every waterfall I take, or any long exposure for that matter, it's just, you know, it's always a learning experience. Alright, so I've got this really weird subject. Well, at least I find it very unique in kind of an abstractual way, in the way the composition kind of leads with these three main little, I guess you call them leading lines in the tree bark here on this stump. And I just love the way it kind of leads it right to the center focal point of this little leaf that's just grown right through it. And so I use my polarizer just to, once again, knock out any reflections. And then I'm using the wide angle lens and doing a nice top-down perspective. And the cool thing about this is, with the rule of thirds, is that I can off-center it, which I did. And then later on, if I want to crop it down to like a 1x1, 1-to-1 square crop, I can do that as well, just to really center this leaf. But so far, the results are looking really good. I'm really liking it. And it's a nice little kind of intimate landscape, kind of a little more of a quieter subject than the loud roaring waterfalls that we just were experiencing. So yeah, it's a nice little subject, and settings are pretty typical. I use a little slower shutter speed just to let in more light here, and then the main one I use is that I set my aperture to a very narrow aperture, which should be a higher f-stop number. So in this case I did about f16 because I wanted everything in the tree trunk and around it in the deep shadow areas within these little crevices to be in focus. So other than that, we're just going to keep on going on the trail here and see what we can find. So I'm actually photographing these milfoil flowers. Just these little guys right here. They kind of grow in these little clusters here. I've been shooting mainly top down. I've been shooting handheld because for the most part I try to photograph macro handheld. I just find it's much more flexible than using a tripod in this case. I find a tripod to be much more restrictive, at least. In terms of settings, I've been using 1/25 of a second, f10, and ISO 1000. So I can make sure I just get a nice evenly lit exposure while kind of dropping the rest of the background. Let's say if I'm shooting top down, anything underneath it will be a little bit darker, more underexposed. So you can just put all that focus on the bright white of the milfoil here. And another pro tip I will say is that if you're shooting handheld, I always recommend that you take the focal length that you're shooting at and putting a fraction over it. So like you would a shutter speed at least. So in this case, since I'm shooting just at 75 millimeters here on the zoom lens, I should shoot at least a bare minimum of 75th of a second. So in theory, 1/25 of a second that I'm shooting at here handheld should be sufficiently sharp enough, given with the wind in this case I've been combating, haven't been waiting for the wind to die down, take my photos, and then wait some more if the wind kicks up again. That's another little variable and factor to take into account. And also how steady you are, the way your stance is, and your posture, and how you hold the camera. Never really have your elbows out wide like this. Always trying to have them really close to your body, almost kind of like tucked in and hugged against, I guess you'd be your rib cage. And then, yeah, you almost want to be a little more stiff, but not too stiff, if you know what I mean. You still want to be able to move around if you need to with the camera, especially if you're, like, let's say, painting. Obviously, I'm not in this case. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you're doing when you're shooting handheld with the focal lengths. You probably get the point now, but as you can probably tell, Charleston Falls Preserve is mainly just forest, surrounded by a few kind of prairies here and there. So this is another important tip to consider, is to don't put your camera away until you leave the location, because I thought I was almost done hiking all the trails I could see, at least today, but I found along the meandering stream here all these little foamy little things. I don't even know what you call them, but anyways, I wanted to do a wide angle shot with a 24mm prime lens here, and I wanted to get this. It's basically just a focus on textures and abstractions. So I just want it to be simply only the water, foam things, textures, and I want it to be, that fills the entire frame. And then polarizer is a must in this opinion, because I didn't want any of the trees above or the trees or the leaves above to reflect. And so it's just, you know, it's a texture shot. It was really great actually. But I found it even better is when I varied my shutter speed, which was basically the only setting I really messed around with. And I found a sweet spot in between about 2 seconds and 5 seconds. I think about 3 seconds or 4 seconds is probably about the best I could do, or at least what was my personal favorite. Because really, obviously, it's, you know, this is kind of like art in a way. There's no right or wrong, but I found that like about 3 seconds or 4 seconds was about the sweet spot, and it shows these nice wispy kind of trails. Because I feel like because it's windy out, it's pushing these little foamy things much more. Like more speedier or faster. But yeah, using that longer shutter speed to make, I guess like it would be a long exposure in this case, is what you kind of classify it as. It made, yeah, this nice little just streaks of light, and then the brown water just adds another kind of thing to the whole entire color palette. So it's a very nice little shot. I think it'll turn out pretty well, and once I process it a little bit more and bring back more of the colors and the browns here. And so yeah, it's been pretty good. This might be the last shot I take. I don't know, but we'll see if I can find anything else, abstracts or otherwise here. So I just got out of the thorny badlands over here to my side, but I found this gorgeous just observation tower that you can just climb the steps, and there's some benches right behind me, and it's quite a spectacular view. Every time I think I'm almost done with this place, I keep finding more trails and more different subjects to photograph. So I'm not going to say this is the last bit of the video, but it very well could be. Alright guys, that concludes my first trip to Charleston Falls Preserve here. For my first visit, it was very great, and I spent most of the day here. You know, a lot of time just hiking around different trails, exploring. Luckily I got the shots that I wanted, which I was really happy about. And got some other kind of different surprises, which I'll show you here at the end of the video if I didn't film any video segments for them. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for exploring with me. And make sure I'm getting out there, guys. Alright, thank you. Alright, that pretty much concludes today's on location video. If you enjoyed it, please like it. Leave a comment, you know, just tell me about what your favorite part was. And make sure to follow me on Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram, you not only see the daily posts that I do, 1 photo a day, but you'll also see on my stories different behind the scenes from different videos such as this, where I'll show you things that I excluded from the regular main portion of this YouTube video. And also follow me on Twitter for other kind of unique content, just posting about different, you know, just pieces about basically my photography and my career as it stands now. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and now make sure to get out there. Thank you.